What's up, guys? This is Chills again, back with another episode of the Snub Basics Guide. In this episode, I'm going to cover mines. All about mines, what the different mines do, the pluses and minuses of each of them, as well as mine trapping, how mine trapping works, different ways to place mines both offensively and defensively, as well as some clips and montages of the different mine traps I go through, so you can get a live look at the different mine traps that I go through in the video. So if you guys like this, if it's helpful, please let me know. If it's not helpful, please let me know as well. This guide goes pretty in depth and is pretty long, but I feel like I wanted to make sure it was as comprehensive as possible while also being relatively easy to understand for people that maybe aren't as skilled. So if I did a good job, let me know, but if there's some things that need to be further explained or clarified or maybe simplified, please let me know that as well. Other than that, the video format will be first a look at the ship dealer to go through the mines, then going through offensive mine traps, defensive mine placement, some just further commentary, as well as the montages of each of the different mine traps at the end. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so we are here in the equipment dealer, and I want to run through all of the different mines you can use and when you should be thinking about using certain mines and when you shouldn't, as well as some of the pluses and minuses of all of them. So we'll get started right down the list here. We're in New Haven here in Connecticut. The first mine on this list is the Seeker mine. So the Seeker mine is a lower hull damage, lower shield damage mine. It has a smaller explosion range, and it's much more spammable at a 2.5 second cooldown. It has an ammo capacity of 45, which is the second highest capacity of mine currently in the game. The Screamer is at 50. But when is the Seeker strong? The Seeker is really good against, used on heavier fighters that can use the extra mine capacity to spam at opponents that are constantly trying to get behind them and early turn them. So Seekers are really strong on heavier VHFs, heavier, very heavy fighters, which is kind of an oxymoron, but most Snub players will get the point. Ships that have a lower turn rate, lower response, that are going to struggle against higher turn rate ships. So ships that come to mind on this would be something like the Avenger or the Lich or the Titan, as an example. So use that as your baseline and go from there. Keep in mind, before I get into the rest of these mines here, that any mine is usable on any ship, provided that you know how to use it and you're comfortable with it. You know, you'll find probably mines that you're more comfortable using and you'll just throw on anything. So take all of this advice with a grain of salt. I'm just trying to give you a basic outline of how you should be looking at some of these mines. So moving up from the Seeker, or down I should say, on the screen here is the Ripper mine. So the Ripper mine has much more hull damage, much more shield damage, and a slightly higher detonation distance with a longer cooldown, as well as a lower capacity. So the Ripper mine, in my opinion, is kind of your jack-of-all-trades stock standard mine. It's like your flashpoint of mines, if we want to relate it to guns, right? I think that if you don't know what mine to use and you're not sure how to use them and make them work properly, you cannot go wrong with the Ripper. Hopefully, if you don't know what you're doing with mines, you're watching this video right now, and that should help you. But if you don't, you buy a new fighter, you don't know what to put on it, you're about to go join a fight or an event or something, and you just made a quick throwaway ship, throw a Ripper on it. It's not going to hurt you, not going to do too much harm. So I like the Ripper for that purpose. Most of my fighters, I run Rippers on by default. I switch it up depending on the ship, but when I make a new ship for the first time, it's almost always got a Ripper on it. So the next one is the War Dog mine. So the War Dog mine is used primarily in group fights, primarily because it cannot be detonated via a cruise disruptor. So we're going to go through this once we get outside of the equipment dealer and go through actually how to mine trap. But what War Dogs are really, really powerful with is in group fights, because you cannot, detonate them with cruise disruptors, which means that you can drop them behind you in a group fight with people chasing you and not worry about them getting blown up accidentally by a cruise disruptor. Now, they are a little bit easier to shoot in my experience with them, so keep that in mind if you have a bunch of people chasing you around and shooting you in the back constantly. I would highly recommend you do not drop this when you're de-shielded, and really any mine, and we'll go through that later, but the War Dog especially, because they're much easier to detonate with gunfire, so just keep that in mind if you're going to put War Dogs on as a group fighting mine. The next mine, in my opinion, is another group fighting mine, but it also has other use cases. This is the Screamer mine. So the Screamer mine has the most ammo in the game in terms of mines at this point in time. And it also is a anti-shield mine. So if we look at my fighter right now, on this fighter, I have a graviton shield, a stock standard graviton shield, and it has about 4,130 capacity on it. Now, if we go back to the Screamer mine, if I scroll down here, the Screamer mine has 4,113 shield damage, so it almost entirely destroys a graviton shield in one shot, which is really, really powerful. The other really powerful part of a Screamer is the energy damage of 9,200. What that means is when you hit someone on a Screamer with a Screamer mine, it is going to hurt their power core. It's going to cut into their power core usage. This is really, really strong in duels, especially against more core-hungry loadouts or against 7-gunners. And it's also really strong in group fights when you have people chasing you and they eat a couple of Screamers. For one, they get de-shielded, which puts some pressure on them, but also it hurts their power core, and group fights are all about power core usage, so Screamers are really, really interesting in that regard. When should a Screamer be used? A Screamer is best used, in my personal opinion, when you're talking about dueling, when you're using a heavy hullbuster loadout. What that means really is you're talking about a shotgun loadout, so a full hullbuster setup that is 2.0 refire or lower, or if you're using an all hullbuster loadout in general. I don't think all hullbuster loadouts are particularly viable in the current meta right now, with the exception of shotgun loadouts, but that's another topic. Or if you want to use this for group fights. If you think you're going to be the target of a group of players in a given group fight, it's probably not a bad idea to throw on a Screamer mine to potentially put pressure on their cores and make you survive a little bit longer while your teammates shoot everybody else. Okay, so the next mine here on this list is the Shredder mine. So the Shredder mine is the most powerful mine in terms of hull damage in the game to be used on fighters, and it also has the lowest ammo capacity at 25. So Shredders are what I would call high risk, high reward. So they are very disruptible, I would say. They're easy to CD and detonate in people's faces if people aren't careful dropping them, but they also have the most potential to turn a fight in your favor or basically auto win you a fight. In my opinion, as you approach higher levels of PvP, especially in duels, a Shredder hitting someone's hull is basically the difference between winning and losing a fight in a lot of cases, especially with recent balance changes. So the Shredder is a really, really powerful mine, but it does require quite a bit of skill to use effectively in high-level PvP, and it also is a lot higher risk to use both in duels and in group fights, but you're going to get the biggest payoff for it. So take that with what you will. What should you consider, or what ship should you consider using a Shredder on? Really, any ship you use a Ripper on, you can use a Shredder on. I think Shredders are pretty much universal. They are best used, in my opinion, offensively rather than defensively. They're not as powerful of a defensive tool, in my opinion, because they are much easier to predict when they're used defensively. They also have a lot louder and a lot easier visual and audio cues to deal with when you're fighting against them, so they're easy to disrupt. So in my opinion, using them offensively on faster turning ships is a more popular way and more reasonable way to use them. And then the last mine here is the Swatter mine. So the Swatter mine is what I would call a Shredder light. It does carry slightly more ammo at 30. It does have a little bit higher acceleration, but other than that, the stats are pretty comparable when it comes to their stats. They have a slightly lower range of explosion, but in my opinion, the Shredder is just a better swatter, and I don't think the 5 extra mines the swatter mine gives you is worth sacrificing 2,400 hull damage. So I would not bother with the swatter unless you have a ship that has either a green aesthetic or you're flying something like a Rhineland Valkyrie or something and you think swatters look cool with it. That's really the only case I see you really using them. But to quickly recap on the mines, Seeker, low hull damage, low shield damage, but spammable, really good as a defensive tool on heavier ships. Rippers are your stock standard mine. If you don't know what mine to put on a ship, throw a Ripper on. You can use it on anything and really do anything with it. The War Dog is a special mine that can not be cruise disrupted to detonate it, but it can be shot relatively easily, so an interesting mine to mess around with. It's not one that I think is high up on the priority list, but it's a stronger group fighting mine just because of the fact that it cannot be cruise disrupted to detonate, but it is easier to detonate with gunfire, so just something to think about. Screamer is a little bit more niche, really popular in duels when you're using a shotgun heavy or full hull buster loadout, or if you are the target in a group fight and you can land these on somebody's power core to make you survive a little bit longer. The Shredder mine is a high-risk, high-reward offensive mine, in my opinion. I think it's better used on faster-turning ships, and you're running almost a glass cannon style with that. And then the Swatter, again, is kind of a Shredder light. I wouldn't use it other than the fact that you like green and it goes well with an aesthetic you're trying to pull off. Also, just to point out, all the Seeker, Ripper, Screamer, Shredder, and Swatter can all be detonated with cruise disruptors. The War Dog cannot. So it's the only one on this list that cannot be detonated with a CD, which in my opinion is important when we go to talking about how to actually mine trap. So that's what we will go ahead and do now. Okay, so we are here in Con with the Blind Fire Dummy, and we are going to talk about what exactly are mine traps and how do you use mines properly when you are in a duel. So what a mine trap is the idea of placing a mine in a way where the enemy flies into it or takes damage. Now, the original kind of definition of mine trapping is by using a mine, dropping it, and then using a cruise disruptor to detonate the mine in somebody's face to do damage to their ship. There are mine traps, in my opinion, I consider them mine traps that do not require the use of cruise disruptors, so that's why I like to, modify the definition a bit. So, how does this work in actuality? Let's say that the dummy here is an enemy. When I drop the mine here, it's going to go towards them. I use my cruise disruptor, and I blow it up as the mine approaches their ship, getting ready to go off. It's just a couple of things to think about. So for one, these kind of mine traps that use cruise disruptors do not work with or against War Dogs because War Dogs cannot detonate via a cruise disruptor. So keep this in mind as we go throughout the video, that some of these tricks will not apply to the War Dog mine in particular. The other thing to think about is that your cruise disruptors also destroy enemy mines that are within its range, right? What that means in the most basic terms is that if I am dueling somebody and I think they are going to drop a mine, I think they're timing a mine placement, I will go ahead and cruise disrupt early. I'll fire my CD early and try to predict them dropping the mine so it blows up in their face instead of mine. With that said, I think when you are learning how to use mines properly, it is best as a kind of hard rule for yourself to not drop a mine if you do not have shields. A mine that blows up in your face onto your hull is catastrophic in a duel scenario, assuming equal skill, because it's unnecessary damage that you took, that you caused yourself. And in a duel where both players are of similar skill level, it can make the difference between winning and losing a fight. And that risk is elevated when you have a higher damage mine. So in this case, I'm using Shredders as are example mine for this video. So I typically don't like to drop shredders if I do not have shields. However, when you get into higher level dueling and it becomes a game of predicting mines, sometimes it makes sense, in my opinion, and people may disagree, but in my opinion, it makes sense to try and sometimes drop mines even if you don't have shields up, because you can throw off someone's timing and they might not be expecting you to drop a mine at that point in time. But that is a calculated risk, and it's a risk that should be calculated, not done kind of haphazardly. Something that I realized I forgot to talk about during the original video, and you're seeing this now post-editing, is to actually counter mine traps. So one of the ways that I counter somebody mine trapping me is I will listen for the incoming missile audio cue, which means that someone is launching a cruise disruptor in my direction. And when I hear that incoming missile audio cue, I will launch my countermeasure. So if you notice, I have my Fortress countermeasures on slot 10. I have this bound to my V key. So when I hear somebody launch a cruise disruptor at me, that probably means they've launched a mine trap. I will go ahead and cruise disrupt it, or I'm sorry, countermeasure the cruise disruptor, and that gives me a percentage chance of blocking the explosion of the cruise disruptor. And if the cruise disruptor explosion is blocked, that also means the mine explosion is blocked, provided that I don't, of course, fly into it. Now, the Fortress countermeasure has a decoy effectiveness of 70%, which is the highest of all current countermeasures in the game. So I typically use this on every ship, every fighter at least, that I run, because I prefer having the highest percentage chance of success at the cost of lower ammo. But keep in mind that even at the highest percentage chance, it's only 70%. So you're not going to block every single mine, but you can block a lot of them with proper usage of countermeasures against cruise disruptors. So just wanted to point that out for the tutorial as well. With that out of the way, let's get into the first style of mine trap. The first style of mine trap I want to go through is what I call the slide and CD mine trap. This is the most basic offensive mine trap to use when dueling somebody, and I think it's the most understandable to learn reasonably. So let's assume that the dummy and I are jousting each other, meaning we're going to fly past each other. I'm going to get a little bit of distance. And so let's say we're dueling, and I'm going to fly at him, and I'm flying to my left. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the mine as I EK past, and then CD it and blow them up here. Obviously, this is more or less in slow motion because this is a dummy, and it is not a real live target. So, you know, think about that as we're going through this. What I'll do is I'll also upload some kind of perspectives of different mine traps and when they should be used in this video, so you have an idea of how these work. But feel free to ask me any questions you have about how this works. But this is a pretty standard mine trap to use. So again, you're going to be flying in their direction. You're going to be strafing off to your left or to your right. You're going to drop the mine as you come around, and you're going to detonate it in their face as they, you know, pass you. Something to think about with this mine trap is that at higher levels of play, this becomes highly, highly predictable. If I am personally, you know, dueling somebody and I see them all of a sudden start sliding to their left or to their right, I'm almost always going to CD them because I think they're trying to set up that mine trap in particular. So keep that in mind when you start dueling, you know, strong players. They're going to start looking for you to predict mines. So, you know, consider that as you learn. The next one I want to go into is mine ramming. So mine ramming is exactly how you think it sounds. You're flying into close range of someone and just kind of dropping it on their face. So like, let's say we're flying at each other. I'll drop it here and just, they'll fly directly into it. This is very, very easy to understand, but it's a little bit higher risk. You can speed up the process by dropping the CD. And ideally, you want to get as close to them as possible and giving them as little time to react as possible. Again, dropping it here, and it blows up there behind them. This mine is high risk. because you are flying directly in a straight line at the person, there is a chance you get de-shielded. So think about our rule that we said at the beginning. You have a higher likelihood to be de-shielded on something like this as you drop the mine. So make sure that when you're doing this, either you press your shield battery key, you go ahead and use your shield batteries to get that damage resistance so they cannot de-shield you, and then drop the mine, or just be prepared to, press it if need be. Next mine trap I want to go through is what I call the early turn mine trap. So this is a little bit more complex and it requires knowledge of a couple of different skills to pull off effectively. But I find this mine to be extremely useful when I'm flying a fast turning ship, whether that's a VHF or a heavy fighter. I use this on heavy fighters all the time against heavier ships, and I'm using it against players that are going to stop and shoot me if I think they're going to stop and shoot me. So the way this works is I'm going to take a pass at this dummy, and I'm assuming instead of the dummy passing me, the dummy is going to stop and shoot at me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off my turn early, and drop the mine as I am turning across the front of their screen and dropping it on their head. So let's assume that the blind fire dummy here is going to shoot at me. I'm going to fly at them. Oh, they're stopping to shoot. I'm going to turn and drop it on their face like this. So the dummy's the target. We're flying at them. They're going to stop and shoot. We're going to drop the mine on them. And you can see that that went off. It gives them very little time to react. Again, this is very similar to mine ramming, except you're combining a turn into it rather than just flying directly past them. But I think that's an important distinction because you're opening yourself up a little bit here because you can put yourself potentially in a worse position as a result, right? If he just continues to shoot you here and he doesn't move and you drop the mine on him, look at kind of where you are. If he had stopped there to move the whole time, now he's kind of behind me, right? So this is a mine that, in my opinion, is kind of more advanced in regards to usage because you are trading your positioning for mine damage here, in my opinion. And this is why I think it's a lot better to use this on a faster turning ship, because when you're using this on a faster turning ship, they're not going to be behind you for very long because you have a turn rate advantage. So again, I think this is more popular on fast turning ships and if you have kind of a turn speed advantage in a given duel. The last mine I want to get into is forward mining. Now, I think forward mining is the hardest of these to learn effectively. In my opinion, it requires pretty fast hands when it comes to, APM and just, pressing your buttons quickly. But it also requires knowledge of how to use your nanobots and shield batteries as well as how to bait people into trading. So what a forward mine is exactly how it sounds. What we are, assuming here is that the blind fire dummy and I are going to stop and trade with each other. When we go to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a mine directly in front of me and then almost instantly CD it. So if I do this, if I back up a little bit, I drop the mine and CD it like this. Now I'm a little bit far away from the ship. If we do it again, and this is an even better example because I have lower shields, what I'll do is I'll shield that, drop the mine, blow it up in their face like this. In a high-level duel, these are, I think, the most powerful mines to learn how to use for dueling, particularly with shredders, because a couple well-placed forward mines will basically auto-win you any given fight, assuming players are of equal skill. So I think it's a really valuable skill to learn how to do properly, but it also requires a lot of timing and fast reaction speed in order to make it work. So again, how does this work? Let's say we're trading. I'll drop the mine and blow it up in their face like this. Best when it's combined with the usage of shield batteries. So let's say me and the dummy are trading with each other. I'm able to de-shield him before he de-shields me. I'll go ahead, pop the batteries, get the shield resistance, and blow it up quickly like this. This is in my opinion, this is the most popular way to use mines in extremely high-level dueling, and for good reason. It's because it works really, really well. It is best used, in my opinion, with shredders, players like Cobalt and Leon are, masters of this. They're extremely good at forward mining. If you want more specific kind of guides on how to do that or want more specific instruction, I would reach out to either one of them if you're in the PvP server, or reach out to me directly with kind of any questions you have. I know the basics, but Leon and Cobalt, in my opinion, are the two best players on current Discovery that know how to do this, to a really, really high level. And they can do this with any mine, not just with shredders. But I think shredders are the best case to use for it. Okay, so let's take a look at how to use mines defensively. I have one of my friends here that's going to help me demonstrate the actual guide. But let's assume that he is turning behind me and I can't see him. What is the proper usage to use mines here? So he's going to fly at me. We're going to fly around each other here for a second. I notice he's off my screen. I can't see him. And I'm going to drop the mine and immediately cruise disrupt it in him. Or I should say on his head as he's turning behind me. What this does, in essence, is it discourages him from continuing to outturn me, right? It forces him to get some distance, or it forces him to use shield bats. But what this is really, really good for, this defensive mine trapping, is your most basic mine usage. This is what you should be using if you're in a slower ship, or if you maybe aren't as good of a turn-based player, you're not as good as turning, you should be trying to, blow up mines in somebody's face by dropping it behind you and then waiting maybe a second and a half and CDing it. Your CD timing is going to vary with how close they are to your ship and how aggressively they're turning, right? So keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that when someone's behind you, they're going to be able to see that mine coming, and if they're really, really good at predicting mines, they'll predict you to drop that mine. So it's best, if you can, to have your shields up when you go to do it, if at all possible. So a couple kind of key things I want to talk about is, when it comes to mines, is how reliant should you be on mines and duels? There's stigmas that go around in regards to people spamming mines and, what's kind of the etiquette when it comes to mines, and, how reliant should you be on them. And, some people do things like limit the number of mines they use in a practice duel so they don't become overly reliant. And here's kind of my lowdown on that. So, you were given enough ammo on mines for a reason, so use them if you think you need to use them. Keep in mind, though, that outside of the Connecticut practice environment, you may not have a full hold of mines. You may have to duel more than one person, and you may have to be in a group fight where mines could come in handy. So, I don't think it's necessarily good practice to, use every single mine that you have in a fight, in a duel. But I think it's also case-by-case dependent as well. If I'm dueling one of Haste's light fighters or heavy fighters, there is a really high chance I use most, if not all, of my mines and most, if not all, of my CDs in that fight. Simply because certain players are so good at positioning and outturning that a lot of times you don't have much choice, in my opinion, but to mine. So, however, I don't think that means you necessarily need to spam mines like an idiot. I think you should be using mines with the intent to, trap somebody. If I'm just flying in a circle here and this person's constantly behind me and all I'm doing is just dropping mines off cooldown and I'm not doing anything here, like, what is this? Like, this is doing nothing for me, right? Like, I just keep dropping these over and over again. Like, that's not necessarily great skill in terms of mine usage, and you're not going to learn much from that, right? That doesn't mean you don't drop multiple mines, but when you're dropping multiple mines, drop them with the intent of doing them, not just doing them because you are, you're scared or like they're behind you, you don't know what else to do, but just to drop a million mines. Like, you should be thinking about what, where they are, what kind of mine you have. Are you dropping them on shields or not? Are you using a mine that is good against shields or not? All of these things are important when you talk about proper mine placement. So I don't think any player should be entirely reliant on mines to do their damage. I think if you suspect that you're too reliant on mines to do damage, then either put screamers on so you can't do that, or you know, some people say like I won't use more than 10 mines in a duel or something like that. I mean, you can do that. I personally have never really needed to do that. I just kind of look at my mine placement or my mine capacity after a fight. So like, let's say I'm dueling in this saber against another saber and I only have 7 shredders left. I probably used too many mines, or I didn't place them properly, right? Good mine users don't need to use all of their mines, right? Because what they're doing is they're picking and choosing their moments to drop them in a way that makes sense. Keep in mind as you're learning how to use mines that quality is better than quantity, right? You don't need to drop 35 out of 35 rippers to be good at using rippers. I'd rather someone drop 10 well-placed rippers than 35 badly placed ones because they're just spamming them off cooldown, right? So keep that in mind as you're learning the Minetrap game. Please give me some feedback. I really appreciate it. I want to continue to make more of these tutorials, these guides, if they turn out helpful. But thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Thanks, guys.